Okay, welcome back. This is a remake here of our getting started of chapter 3. I don't know what happened in my previous video. It kind of went so all my writing was working, but my audio was like 2 minutes ahead of it, so it was kind of off. So we're going to do a remake for you here, and hopefully this one works a little bit better. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a little bit of review of fractions and decimals. Now what you need to remember is that a fraction and a decimal are the same thing, just in different formats. So just like you can have a Dodge truck, you can have a Chevy truck, both are trucks, just different types, right? So same thing here. So let's say, for example, I have 1/2. Well, 1/2 is, in essence, a division question, which means 1 divided by 2. And so if we take that 1 divided by 2, you can see it's 0.5. And so, as I said, a fraction and a decimal are just the same thing, just in a different format. So let's say, for example, I take 2/5. Well, that's going to mean 2 divided by 5. And so if I do 2 divided by 5, 0.4. All right. Let's do it the other way. Let's go from a fraction to a decimal. So just for the sake of doing it, let's take 0.15. And let's put that as a fraction. Well, fraction, if I say that properly in proper mathematical terms, that is 15/100ths. So that means 15 out of 100. And I know it's 100 because there's 2 numbers after the decimal place, so therefore I put 2 zeros. If it was 0.155, I would put 155 over 1,000. 3 numbers after the decimal place, so therefore it's over 1,000. So 15 over 100. And I can reduce that, that's what we're going to get to next, with writing fractions in simplest terms. So if I have that 15 over 100, well, I can divide both of those by 5. And so 15 divided by 5 is 3. 10 divided by 5 is 20. There's nothing I can divide 3 by and 20 by, so therefore that's in simplest terms. Let's say I've got 4 over 6. Well, I can divide both of those by 2. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So you always have to divide by a common number to reduce. Let's say I have 50 over 80. Well, I can divide both of those by 10. Fifty divided by 10 is 5. 80 divided by 10 is 8. And I can't simplify those any further. That's as far as we can go. Okay? Let's just go back up here for a second and go talk about going from a decimal to a fraction. So if I've got that 0.155 I was talking about, there's 3 numbers after the decimal. So that means I'm going to put it over 1,000. And then I will try to simplify it after that. Okay, let's talk about mixed numbers. Okay, so a mixed number is just that. It's a mixture of whole numbers and fractions. So if I have 1 3/5, and I want to convert that to an improper fraction, an improper fraction means the top number, the numerator, is larger than the bottom number, which is the denominator. Okay, and so that's exactly what this means. The numerator is larger than the denominator. So to do that, I'm going to basically take the 5, I'm going to multiply it by the 1, and then I add the 3. So I take the denominator, I multiply it by whatever the whole number is, and then I add to that the numerator, and then I keep it over whatever the denominator is. So 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8 over 5. Right, let's look at another example. Let's say I have 2 3/4. Well, to write that as an improper fraction, it's going to be 2 times 4 plus 3 all over 4. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11 over 4. Right? Pretty straightforward. So now let's go the other way. Let's say that we are going from an improper fraction where my numerator is larger than my denominator. Well, in essence, just like before, we are dividing. So if we take 11, we divide it by 4, well, 4 goes into 11 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. We subtract. I have 3, so I have a remainder of 3. So my whole number is 2, and out of that 4, I have 3 left over, which is 2 3/4. Let's look at another one. 15 over 10. Well, 10 goes into 15 one time. And then I have a remainder of 5, so 5 over 10. I can divide both of those by 5. So the 1 stays like it was, and then 1/2. Okay. Adding and subtracting fractions. These are probably the hardest ones of all. Okay. And in order to do that, what we need is a common denominator. So I'll show you a couple of ways to do this, depending on the actual question. So if I take 1/2 and I add 2/3. Well, one way to get a common denominator is just take the denominators and multiply them together. So in this case, 2 times 3 is 6. And then I'm going to cross multiply. So I'm going to take the 1 and the 3 and multiply them together. I'm adding, so I add. And then I take the 2 and the 2 and I multiply those together. So 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 2 is 4 over the 6, which is 7 over 6. And it's an improper fraction, which is improper, so we should write that as 1 and 1/6. Okay? This method is what I call the butterfly method, because if you kind of look at this shape here, it's almost like a butterfly. Let me show you another example. Okay, let's say I have 3/5 minus 1/3. So, take those two together, it's 15. Multiply those two together. 3 times 3 is 9. I'm subtracting, so minus. I take those two. 1 times 5 is 5. 9 minus 5 is 4. 15ths. Now if I have 1/2 plus 3/4, I could do the butterfly method, but if I look carefully, if I multiply that 2 times 2, and therefore the top one by 2, I'll have 4. So that would give me 2/4 plus 3/4. So now my denominator is already the same, and I just have to add the numerators, which is 5/4, which again is an improper fraction. So we write that as 1 1/4. Okay, so one of the easiest things to do, like I say, is usually multiply the two denominators together, and then we cross multiply. But you don't always need to do that. Multiplying fractions is probably the easiest thing to do. Let's say I've got 2/3 times 1/5. Well, all I'm going to do is multiply the top number by the top number, bottom number by the bottom number, and then simplify. So 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 5 is 15. There's nothing I can divide 2 by that I can divide 15 by, so I stop. I'm done. Right? Let's say I've got 1/2 times 2/3. Well, so it's 1 times 2 over 2 times 3, which is 2/6. But I can divide both of those by 2, so my answer would be 1/3. 2 divided by 2 is 1, 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then division, it's essentially the same thing as multiplying. Right? So if I've got 2/3, I'm dividing it by 1/5. Well, what we do is we're taking the 2/3 and I want to group it into fifths. So I keep my 2/3 as it is. I change my division sign to a multiplication sign, and then I flip the second fraction. So it becomes 5/1. And so then I just do my multiplication. 2 times 5, and then 3 times 1, which is 10/3. We simplify that down, which is 3 1/3. So if I take 2/3 and I group them into fifths, I would have 3/5 and then a third left over. Okay. That's it. That's all you got to do. Okay. So let's do the get started, please, on page 66, and let's do numbers 1 to 8. Don't forget, if you have a question, put your hand up and ask, and we'll try to get to you as soon as we can. Okay. See you soon.